You can't have a fantasy world without dungeons. That's why it's called Dungeons and Dragons, not just and Dragons. So when it comes to fantasy worlds in video games, they're more riddled with underground tunnels than an ant farm. We've spent our fair share of time crawling through these dank medieval passageways, and after a while you start to notice some recurring themes. I mean, themes in addition to just an uncontrollable rat and spider infestation. Here are 7 things bound to happen in every single dungeon, and beware spoilers ahead for the following games.
How can I help fight the risen dead?
I admire your courage, but Captain Dalton and the militia were slaughtered by those things. Only I survived.
Your warriors will be avenged.
In a video game, a dungeon is usually a series of tunnels deep beneath the earth, and the thing about a series of tunnels deep beneath the earth is that they tend to be quite dark. Which is fine if you want your hero to stumble around in the dark for a bit, bump their head on a low door frame, fall unconscious on the floor, and then be eaten by spiders over the course of 3 days. The problem is that doesn't necessarily make for the most compelling video game experience. Though if it was part of a Dark Souls game, people would love it, obviously. The good news is that in almost every single video game dungeon, even the ones supposedly undisturbed for 1,000 years, some kind soul has popped in and lit all the candles and torches so you can find your way around. And we're not talking a long time ago either. These things would only burn for a few hours tops. That means either a conscientious dungeon zombie has been keeping the lights on just in case they get visitors, which is apparently the lore reason for this in Skyrim, or you're hot on the heels of an arsonist adventurer. Get it? Hot on the... yeah, never mind. And if you have been beaten to the dungeon by another adventurer, they must be a proper pyromaniac, because they've lit every single torch but somehow avoided killing any enemies and haven't looted a single treasure chest. Maybe even a pyromancer. No, not like the guy from American Pie, that's a totally different thing.
Robbers were only after one thing. An ornament, solid gold in the shape of a dragon's claw. You could? I've got some coin coming in from my last shipment. It's yours if you bring my claw back.
If you really want to keep people out of your dungeon, maybe try a securely locked door to which only you have the key. If you secretly do want people to get in, then why not try a puzzle lock that a child could solve? That seems to be the logic behind most dungeon designers, given that we can't go 5 minutes in a video game dungeon like Bleak Falls Barrow here in Skyrim without having to solve a basic brain teaser to open some door or other. And what's the Sphinx-like riddle sent to trap you here, slowly driving you insane as you wrestle with an impossible quandary for the rest of your days? It's matching 3 images in the same order as they are written on the wall above a locked door. And remember that, unbelievably, it'd be even easier to solve if one of the stone images hadn't fallen on the ground and smashed a little bit. The last time we saw a puzzle like this, it was brightly coloured, chewable, and suitable for ages 6 months and up. Besides, who's going around maintaining the 1,000-year-old, presumably extremely complicated clockwork mechanism that's required to operate these dumb puzzles for babies? Is someone going around with a medieval can of WD-40? Is it the same people who are lighting the candles? Are the Draugr going around maintaining the puzzle locks? Because, honestly, that is a step too far, Skyrim lore.
Stop! Brothers and sisters, be at ease. We do not wish any more of our people hurt.
So you've spent the last hour wending your way deeper and deeper down into a dungeon. You've murdered enemies by the dozen. You cannot win! Filled your inventory with precious loot. And worn your shoe leather all the way out on this epic dungeon hike to what feels like the centre of the Earth. Or should I say, the centre of Middle-earth.
That's Tolkien.
I know. Finally, you reach the important artifact, boss battle, or naked forest spirit that is the point of this whole dungeon.
I bid you welcome, mortal. I am the Lady of the Forest.
After that, it's time to leave. Now, you're asking yourself, oh man, am I going to have to backtrack all the way through this dungeon to get out? What's the shortest route back to the entrance? Does that hair covering her nipple stay in place on its own, or does she have to use forest magic? Well, good news for you, Dungeoneer.
Outside of this chamber, the passage leading back to the surface has been opened for you. Return with Zathrian as soon as you can.
This is the point where you will likely be treated to a highly convenient but previously inaccessible or hidden exit.
The passage just outside of this room is open to you now, and it will lead you to sunlight.
This exit will lead you out of the dungeon and back to where you need to be faster than you can say, if only we'd known about this bloody back door beforehand, it could have saved us a lot of time and murder.
Ah, and here you are already.
Oh well, at least we got that small darkspawn shield.
Let's be brutally honest, as video game environments go, dungeons aren't exactly the most varied. Take OG Dungeon Crawler Dungeon Master on the Amiga and Atari ST, for example, where the majority of the scenery is endless corridors made from the same grey stone walls. Good solid construction though, as evidenced by the fact that you can heroically kill yourself by walking into them. Oh, they'll be singing songs about you in the local tavern, just not particularly flattering songs. A bigger problem than deliberately smashing your own skull open on the masonry is just getting lost. Because dungeons tend to be a series of similar looking tunnels winding confusingly around underground with few if any landmarks, it's exceptionally easy to completely lose your bearings. I mean, you could use this tree for a landmark if it wasn't walking around and trying to murder you by screaming at you. Still less embarrassing than the wall thing. The upshot is that more often than not you'll be exploring for ages, get turned around somehow, and end up right back at the start of the dungeon, becoming momentarily excited by the big door that was in fact the exact same one you entered through about 45 minutes ago. Alright, forget the walls. I've got a new nemesis.
When you're furnishing a dungeon, your options for decor are slightly limited. You're pretty much looking at wall torches, braziers, and the odd ominous looking statue that may or may not come to life. Called it. One piece of dungeon interior design that never goes out of fashion, or at least hasn't for the last 4,000 or so years, is pottery. It's fair to say you can't enter a video game dungeon without tripping over a giant ornate jar, sometimes literally. It was an accident. If we're going to be totally honest though, there's little more satisfying as you crawl through a multi-level dungeon than smashing pottery and enjoying the satisfying sound as it shatters into 100 terracotta pieces, particularly if the thing it's smashing against is an enemy's face. It was not an accident. We should probably feel worse about this. After all, these jars from crypts and dungeons would probably have gone on to be priceless artifacts of deep historical significance. Something that archaeologists would have pored over in hundreds of years trying to work out how this once great civilization lived. On the other hand, this wanton vandalism is an essential strategy in Zelda games, as pots can contain rupees, quest items, and figurative hearts that boost your health. I mean, unless these are actual canopic burial jars and contain real human hearts, in which case, you, Link, you.
If I were you, I'd keep away from the barrow on the east side of town. It's haunted. There ain't much more to tell. They're haunted, and you should stay away.
If you're going to hide a load of treasure underground, you're probably going to want to include some traps to avoid grave robbers getting their hands on your beloved +2 Staff of Clonking or whatever. Here's a tip though, if you are going to rig the place up like the house from Home Alone, maybe don't make all of the traps extremely easy to spot. Like for example, suspending a massive, impossible to miss battering ram in plain view. There is no way you're going to pass that off as an ornamental light fitting. Maybe if this place wasn't so well lit. Thank you, conscientious dungeon zombies. And even if a reasonably savvy treasure hunter can't see the intended instrument of their destruction lying in wait, you can guarantee there'll be a large, extremely obvious pressure plate right in the centre of the floor. Ooh, why not put a welcome mat over it or something? Reverse psychology. What you end up with in every dungeon is a series of traps that only the most clumsy, oblivious adventurer would trigger. and despite this, there's usually more skeletons listed around them than the cover of a thrash metal album. Honestly, it's like no one in this medieval fantasy world has ever even watched an Indiana Jones movie.
You are too late, Rastakhan.
You don't just march into a deadly dungeon for no reason. There's always a reason. I mean, sure, there's the practical meta reason, which is that you know there's a percentage chance that at the end of the dungeon, the boss, when defeated, will drop some sweet-ass pauldrons that you need to complete your armor set. But then there's the reason, by which I mean the story reason. The writers behind the game worked long and hard, slaving over a hot keyboard to type out the lore and the dialogue and the quest text and the flavor text and all the other written elements of the game that establish the long and storied background of this particular dungeon, and the reason you should risk life and limb going in there.
Time for a sacrifice!
But you wouldn't know. You skipped all that text.
Welcome to Zuldazar.
Hey, I'm a hero. I don't have time to read. So although I'd love to tell you why the bad guy who has my pauldrons deserves to die, or where he came from, or how he turned bad, and why he's chilling at the end of this dungeon, I can't. I didn't get where I am today by reading quest giver text.
My blood for gold.
Time is money, friend, and money is expensive rideable mounts.
Thank you for watching this video about the things you're going to see in every dungeon. Hope that's convinced you to stay out of dungeons in future. You wouldn't listen to me, would you? But then you were down in the dungeon and all of a sudden, oh no, I'm getting attacked by giant spiders. Well, see, could have learned something from this video. Anyway, if you're interested in watching more videos and not going down dungeons, then can I interest you in perhaps this one, which is from us, and it's about horror movie villains who are way easier to kill in video games, like Freddy Krueger and Jason Voorhees. Down here is a video from Outside Extra, which is about button prompts, you know, like QuickTime events and stuff like that are just weird. Like usually it's like press X to jump. These are not press X to jump, so click on that if you want to see some really weird button prompts. Thanks for watching.